Hello, this is Apostle Rosalind Solomon, and this is Rosalind Solomon's YouTube channel and Yahweh's channel, and today's date is October 5th, 2022. What if I told you the history and the story we so-called learned about slavery is not true at all? They show us Kunta Kunde movies and slave movies where the white man went over there and got our ancestors, hunted them down, killed whoever they needed to kill. They used religion because it was in the Bible. What if that was a lie? What if they really, first of all, you got to stop and ask yourself, because no one really asked this question. How did the white people who originate from the coconoids originates from the Neo-Saxons, right? So how did they know that Africa even existed? Because back in them days, all they had was those wooden boats. And it took 6 months, sometimes 9 months to travel from here to there. When Queen of Sheba went to go and see uh, King Solomon, she came from Ethiopia. And she went to the other part of Africa because we know the Israel in the Middle East never existed. That's the borderline of Africa, the tectonic plates. So wherever she went to see Solomon, it took her 6 months to get there. That's how huge Africa is. So if it took her 6 months, imagine how many months it took from Africa to America to the UK, Great Britain at the time, France, and the Arab nations. A year, right? So how did they find out about Africa? I'm going to tell you why. Because the original humans that come from God originated in Africa. Some of the tribes left because they got wind of Asia, the UK, which is Great Britain, and America. They got wind of these nations. So what did they do? They built them boats, just like they did in America, the UK, and the Arab nations, and France, and the Spaniard nation. They built them boats. Some went to Asia, some went to the UK, and some went to the Americas. So there were already melanated people in America before slavery started, right? So because some people in Africa left and spread it amongst the world like the Bible says they did, this is how the white America, the white Great Britain, the white France, the Spaniards found out about Africa. So what happened was the Americas, the UK, and France, they needed a lot of different things, different types of fruits and sugars and cloths and things that they did not have access to over here, right? So they figured out a way to go over to Africa, see how, they could trade with them. And then also Africa kings used to take their enemies and put them in prison. So not only did they start to trade the different cloths and spices and stuff, they started trading the African prisoners, which were their enemies of the tribes of Judah and other tribes. So the Americas, the French people, the UK people, even then later on the Arabs and Spanish, went and paid for these prisoners, gave money, gold, silver, whatever they used in those days, to these African kings that ruled these stations at the edge of the sea line, right? Paid them cash for these prisoners. And the Americas took their prisoners back to America and made them slaves, mistreated them, killed them, the whole 9 yards. Whereas Britain and France, what they would do is they would go and buy the slaves from Africa, put them on the ship and take them to the Caribbean. That's how blacks got into the Caribbean. And then they would come back from the Caribbean with sugar or cloth. So the French and the UK people never even knew that their countries was into slave trade, because the slaves would never make it back to the UK or France. They would go to the Caribbean. This is how the Caribbeans got into the Caribbean, okay, the black Caribbean. And they would come back with sugar and cloth, the UK and France. But America wanted to enslave our ancestors, built this country on the backs of our ancestors, enslaved us, our ancestors, took away their knowledge, took away their God, took away everything, made them hate each other. They raped, they killed, they scorched. They did all kinds of terrible things to our ancestors. And we still feeling the repercussions of it to this day. Then America started taking guns over to them. See, the UK, as far as our research, the UK and France, I don't know if they started trading guns with them, but I know America started bringing guns to them and getting slaves. And then check this out. Whenever a king was inaugurated, one king died, another one come. Do you know the white people, the British and the French, would be invited guests in that king's kingdom to watch this inauguration? Okay. They didn't start using religion until way later. It's hard to explain. I gotta find a better way to explain it to you about how the Roman Catholics and the Christians, white Christians and white Roman Catholics, were involved with this part. At this point, Great Britain and France wasn't involved in this religious part. It was mostly coming from America and some of the Spaniard nations, and maybe Great Britain, but not as much. So technically, we've been lied to. We were here before the slave trade started, right? They found out about us because our ancestors left Africa and scattered amongst the world. America didn't have a lot of different spices and things and cloths. They found out Africa had everything. Africa was the jewel. They even started a gold trade with them, America and Great Britain. Now, at times, Great Britain and France, at times they would keep slaves, but guess what they did? They dressed them up, made them very distinguished, educated them, and used them as maids and servants and soldiers to the royal kingdom. Although they made them slaves, they didn't mistreat them, the UK and France. But America, totally different story. Totally different story. So listen, our ancestors were not taken from Africa being in the jungle. I mean, some tribes were in the actual jungle, and they would go and get them. In the beginning, they would go and sneak over there and fight them and kill off their leaders and take whatever human beings they could take. But then the Africans started getting smart and they started fighting for themselves, and it was way more of them than it was of these Americans and British and France people. So they started killing them and wiping them out. So they said, okay, the only way we could get these slaves is if we trade with them, give them money, whatever. So see, America needed people to build America. So this is why they brought our ancestors. The UK and France needed slaves to take to the Caribbean to till the sugar canes because they needed the sugar and the cloth, right? The Spaniards started getting involved because they love spices. Okay, Africa got every kind of spice you like. So that's how they started. The Arabs started getting involved when it came to gold, silver, opal, jewels, jade. So they lied to us. Don't ever watch a Kunte Kinte movie again. Because they lied. Our ancestors were bought by money, by guns, by trade, brought over here to build this country. Whereas in Great Britain and France, they were educated, dressed well, and made maids and servants. The ones in Caribbean got there because UK and France took them there to till the sugar. This is why the Royal Kingdom did such a colonization over there in the Caribbean. This is why the Queen ruled over there for so long. So, guys, they don't want you to know that the black people, the melanated people, were already here in America, and that's how they found out about Africa. They were already in the UK and Asia and France because they migrated there, like the Bible says, they scattered everywhere. At first, they were attacking the little islands and taking people. But then the Africans got tired of that and they started whooping their butts and killing them. And they realized they couldn't handle them. So they said, okay, we got to trade with them to get their slaves. We got to give them gold and silver, whatever they want to get their slaves to build our country. Because, see, the white man at that time didn't have the ability to build this country. But our ancestors did. Mm-hmm. And the kings in Africa are the ones that sold our ancestors, because our ancestors were the enemy to these kings in Africa. And these kings in Africa, when they catch you, you become their prisoners. And so basically the king could do what he wanted to do. You had other kingdoms killing other kingdoms that were at the stations by the sea so they could take over, because they learned about the white man coming over there trading. So this is your true history. You wasn't swinging from trees. You lived in kingdoms in Africa. You lived in cities in Africa. So once they started enslaving the blacks in Africa, they started enslaving the ones that was already here. Once they started suppressing the blacks in Africa, they started suppressing the blacks here. This is how blacks that was here already, like the Black Wall Street, they killed them one day. Every time we ruled, melanated people ruled a lot of stuff over here. White man couldn't touch us back then. But when they went over there and got some slaves and did what they did, they took our Black Wall Street, they took our banks, they took everything from us. So, baby, we wasn't swinging from trees. We was very educated. Even the ones they took from Africa was very educated. A lot of them was royalty. Shalom.